across Canada. Over 650 programs in communities across the province have been cancelled or suspended intake with no guarantee of return, with 124 programs affected at Centennial College alone. And when exactly were the colleges and the Ford government planning to tell the public about all of this? The answer is that they never intended to. And in the end, it wasn't the colleges or the government that told the truth. It took workers fighting tooth and nail to get this information. When one of the largest layoffs in this province's history and in recent national history can be carried out under the oversight of our elected officials without you, the public, knowing, then they are not accountable to the public anymore. Shame! Shame! And it's because the people running this system want to run our colleges like corporations, but they can't even do it well. Any business owner would tell you that building an entire business model on a variable that can change at any moment, like international student enrollment, is risky business. They did this with support from our elected officials because the Ford government doesn't want to fund public education. They'd sooner let our campuses close and sell off the system. It's already happening. 1.5 million Ontarians, nearly 1 in 10, have seen a campus closure in their community. One of those was Algonquin College's Perth campus. Now we have the former COO of Shopify lobbying our government to open a new corporate-run college in its place. Shame! This government will tell you that they're making, quote, historic investments and move a little money here or there just to look good. All the while, our funding for our colleges is at the lowest rate in Canada. It's 56% of the national average. And they just announced that they're cutting another $1.4 billion from the system over the next few years. We need strong colleges today for the accessible, low-barrier job training that they offer, especially in the face of trade wars that are undercutting and restructuring our economy. But instead, we are bleeding jobs right under Ford's nose. How is that standing up for working-class families? This isn't about mismanagement. This is sabotage. They don't care about your future, your child's future, our community's futures. They lied to us about the scope of the crisis, and so why should we believe that they have the best interests of students or communities in mind? The people overseeing our colleges have treated education as just another way to make money, instead of pressuring the province to fix the funding crisis that we all saw coming. They're failing at their mandate. And if people like the CEO of colleges, the College Employer Council, Graham Lloyd, can't do their job, then maybe they're not fit for the role. It's not just programs with primarily international enrollment that are being canceled, it's also programs we domestically need. Programs like nursing, child and youth care, environmental technologies, specialized art training that is not offered anywhere else. Programs like culinary management in Thunder Bay, the only program of its kind within 1,000 kilometers that has supported food security in the north. Programs like engineering and manufacturing in Windsor, where manufacturing makes up 25% of the GDP, and where half of the skilled trades workers at Stellantis are set to retire soon in an area that is expected to be hardest hit by the tariffs. This has gone too far, and no one is being held to account. So we're here today to tell them we're going to hold them accountable. This fall, we're coming together to demand justice. You've picked a fight with not just the 50,000 workers that are proud to work in Ontario's colleges. You've also picked a fight with the 200,000 workers across OPSEU. Because our members in the colleges train the OPSEU members who work in every corner, in every sector of this province. Our community college system was created by the Conservative government of Bill Davis to serve local communities, to provide accessible, affordable post-secondary education in those communities. And now it's being dismantled by another very different Conservative government who have the power to fix this disaster. We need an end to these layoffs. We're going to fight to restore programs that are critical to our communities. And we need shared decision-making in our colleges to ensure that something like this can never happen again. We need the voices of support staff, of students, of faculty at those tables. This government will find the money to restore public post-secondary education. There are college presidents collecting salaries of over $400,000, even $600,000. That's more than the Prime Minister of Canada. Shame. And I gotta say, I know John Tibbetts, and if he is doing a job as the President of Conestoga that is more important than that of the Prime Minister of Canada, I beg to see evidence of that. Because we're sick of watching our hardworking and dedicated colleagues walked out. We need to see some of these presidents walked out and held accountable. We're going to call on the community to join us in this fight because it affects all of our futures. As public funding continues to drain out of the system, campuses will continue to close. Working class families won't be able to access good education and good jobs without leaving their homes, without leaving their families, without leaving their communities with the workers they need. Also, that the Shopify COOs and Ford's wealthy corporate friends can make a dime off our communities. That is not the future that we want. That is not the future we will accept, and it is not a future that we're willing to settle for. Now you're going to hear from people who are directly affected by these cuts. And first, I'd like to bring up Logan Ruthier, the Vice President of the Centennial Story Arts Campus Student Association, to share some words. Logan?
Hello everyone, my name is Logan Ruthier, and I'm the Vice President of the Centennial College Student Association. I'm also part of OSV as an observer, representing thousands of students across Ontario. Across the board, students have been asking for a few things, but one of them was equitable access to education. They want education that is fair, accessible, and of high quality. Now, unfortunately, what's happening in front of our eyes is the direct opposite of that. What we're seeing is hundreds of programs being suspended. This beautiful marvel of architecture being shut down. And those programs are stemming from marketing, electronic engineering, journalism, and 3D animation across the board. And those are students whose dreams won't be able to materialize. Now, those changes stem directly from funding issues. As it turns out, Ontario gives away the least amount of funding per student amongst all provinces in Canada. Yay! And the issue at hand here is that, yes, this is affecting the students of today. The services are being affected. Their working conditions and studying conditions are being affected day in and day out. Their support systems affected by these cuts and these changes. But it's not only the students of today, because they will all become the nurses of tomorrow, working in our healthcare system, providing opportunities for folks. Not only that, but it's also going to affect the future construction workers, the ones building the houses for so many people around the country. It will affect everybody, your children and your peers. And it cannot happen. These changes are nothing new. From the Student Choice Initiative, these funding cuts, and now Bill 33, it's clear that the government wants to disrupt the post-secondary sector, and we cannot let that happen. What we want is not luxuries. What we want is very clear. We want stability. We want to make sure everybody has a fair shake into studying what they choose. And it is imperative that those discussions start now, before it is too late. I thank you for your time, and that is all.
Thank you, Logan. I'd now like to welcome our next speaker, James Brawn, a part-time faculty member at Centennial College.
Hi everyone, my name is James Brawn. I'm a contract professor in the General Education Department at Centennial College. And in General Ed, we teach elective classes to all college programs. Right? So it's my job to gather aspiring business accountants and HVAC technicians and early childhood educators and pastry chefs all in one room and get them curious about things they didn't know they could or should be curious about. My classes foster critical thinking and develop students' soft skills, the kinds of learning that they need, not only to become skilled professionals, but also good community members. I love my job. I think it's really important. But it's become unsustainable in a college system that values a bottom line more than what's being taught, or how it's being taught, or who's doing the teaching. When I was hired in 2023, Centennial was posting record budget surpluses and unveiling ambitious new expansion plans. New programs, more hiring, sky's the limit, we were told. And I'm shocked that within 2 years, all of that has unraveled. I'm dismayed at how much damage from that unraveling is being laid at the feet of my colleagues and of my students. Shame. Last April, 40% of my department was let go. Mostly contract professors like myself. And these are people, colleagues, friends who had taught for more than a dozen years, had developed their own courses. They were enriching the life of our department and the lives of our students. We know more cuts are coming. I didn't need William Kaplan to tell me that. But we don't know who or how many or when. The line from above over and over is, it doesn't look good, we don't know if we can keep you, we'll let you know. And in the meantime, we have more students filling up fewer classes. There comes a point where it's really hard to call a class an elective when students don't really have all that much to choose from. And it changes the way that I teach. Right? A class of 50 is necessarily less interactive than a class of 30. And I'm sacrificing one-on-one mentorship. I am sacrificing innovations to my teaching just to manage a growing number of students who are there because they really don't have many other choices. But it's the constant uncertainty that I find the hardest. For the last year, every semester, I haven't known if I was losing my job. I didn't know if my course load was going to be cut in half. I didn't know if my course load was going to double. I am constantly stretched between doing my job and looking for another job, because in this system it is impossible to exist without a plan B and a plan C. I don't have sick days. I don't have vacation time. I can't plan my future or find things to look forward to because my present is a hamster wheel that feels like it's spinning off a cliff. And in the meantime, it is my job to stand in front of my students every week and get them excited about their own futures, help them prepare for those futures when I can't even imagine my own. And I mean, the colleges can't go on like this. My students deserve better, my colleagues deserve better, the communities and the industries that depend on our graduates deserve better. And if the province and the College Employer Council doesn't want to do better, then it falls to us to hold them to it. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Next, I'd like to invite up Sarah Timofeyu, a part-time college support staff leader from Mohawk College, and Tony Pettit, a part-time college support staff leader from Seneca College.
I want to tell you about my coworkers. I want to tell you about the workers who are so afraid of this employer, they feel that they can't speak up about being overworked and undervalued. The workers who were pulled into meetings when they arrived to work and were told that they were losing their jobs while another vice president was hired. Recent reports have revealed 1,200 part-time layoffs, but what it doesn't show is the 80% of contract workers who have no job security who are being cut left, right, and center. Shame. We are some of the most precarious workers in the college system. Our colleges are eliminating good jobs and replacing it with more and more precarity at the cost of quality education. What you'll hear from our employer is that the colleges are keeping us involved and up to date with layoff information, and I'd like to challenge that. What about the almost 200 folks that were pulled into a Zoom meeting to be told that their job is being eliminated and denied the proper support for the destruction of their lives? Shame! What about the member from Centennial College who was a week away from completing a probation who cried in my arms over losing her job? Shame! The students that the government claims to care so much about are being subjected to hidden layoffs in the form of eliminating student contracts. There is no mechanism for reporting these losses. They're eliminating library workers, student support groups, leaders and peer-to-peer programming ambassadors. These frontline programs have been significantly reduced for students in our LGBTQ2S+ community, Black students, students with family responsibilities, and students with varying abilities and disabilities. The people at the top who ran our colleges on the exploitation of international students are perfectly comfortable giving themselves wage increases in the double digits. Shame! While the workers suffer the consequences. They'll blame it on federal policy while destroying local communities and programming for accessible education. The Ford government has allowed our employer to run our colleges into the ground. Where is the accountability?
Thank you, Sarah and Tony. I'd like to now invite up our final speaker, Christine Kelsey, Chair of the College Support Full-Time Bargaining Team.
Good afternoon. My name is Christine Kelsey. I've been a full-time college support worker at Algonquin College since 2007, and I'm currently the chair of the full-time college support workers bargaining team, and we represent 10,000 workers across every college of the province. The rest of the team is here with me today behind us. While we've been working hard at the bargaining table all week, we were there today, but we've stepped away to be here because we know that this is a much bigger fight than we can win bargaining alone. What we are facing and experiencing firsthand is a manufactured crisis and the collapse of our community college system. Our colleges have been deliberately and systematically starved of funding by the provincial government. There have been cuts to post-secondary education funding virtually every year since the Ford government took power in 2018. Now the other shoe is dropping. Meanwhile, management teams have expanded at double the rate of enrollment, and so have their salaries, while supports decline for the students who need them. Shame. This is a familiar playbook. Step 1, underfund the system. Step 2, blame the system for shortfalls caused by lack of resources. Step 3, use the public taxpayer dollars to subsidize the private sector and sell off our public system bit by bit. It's the same failing model in America. It's the same model rolled out in Australia with disastrous results. Now at this critical moment, we're seeing proposals from the employer that would make it easier to lay people off. We've watched enough of our colleagues that have worked at their college for years, even decades, walked out the front door. We've seen layoffs sometimes announced without even 24 hours notice and without consultation. The public deserves to know the long-term impacts of these cuts, which will be a hardship in every sector. Our kids will be left only able to choose between a handful of highly competitive programs with limited spots. They won't have the student support services that they need to be successful. This will be felt from the trades to the arts, where careers require specific training or accreditation from programs that are being canceled. The result will be a growing wait list or students forced to relocate across the province to access education. Not everyone can afford to wait or move, especially if you're upskilling or forced to change careers later in life. To give you an example, St. Lawrence College canceled their auto service technician apprenticeship this year, a field which that certification is mandatory. Where are employers in Kingston going to find their mechanics now? 10,000 layoffs won't help our economy, already struggling with labor shortages. And these program cuts will only create new ones. Because this isn't about the immediate loss of good jobs in our communities. This is also about the future of our local economies. Colleges drive outcomes, and possessing a college education slashes youth unemployment rates in half. At a time when Ontario's youth unemployment has effectively doubled in 5 years. Colleges are essential to our rural and northern economies, where higher costs and lower enrollment make local support vital. In small, urban, and rural economies where college grads earn generate 40% of earnings. And they provide a low barrier path to post-secondary education for so many of our neighbors and kids who couldn't have imagined accessing higher education otherwise. Our colleges are essential. So why is it that every other province in Canada can invest more in its students than us? In June, we actually proposed a demand at the bargaining table for adequate funding. It was an invitation for the College Employer Council representatives we sit across from to finally step up and call on the Ford government to address this funding crisis. One that is accessible, public, and prioritizes the skilled labor force Ontario needs. One that we are willing to fight for at any cost. We will do whatever it takes to win. To stop this destructive path of layoffs, closures, and mergers, to restore critical programs that our communities need, and to ensure decisions like this can never be made without us again. Because this fight is for the future of Ontario, and our future can't wait.
Okay, we're open to questions from the media. Go ahead.
Johnson from CBC The National. Thanks so much for this. We reached out to Queen's Park to get their reaction on this. They called your claims baseless and categorically false. They said they provided new funding with over $2 billion of new funding on top of the $5 billion, and they also threw it over to the federal government, who were the people that introduced the international student cap in the first place. What's your response to this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of problems with the math that they're trying to use. It's not adding up, right? One, their own panel called for double the investment just to bring us up to par. Their blue ribbon panel that they put in half of what was recommended by their own experts. And then they actually cut funding in the last budget. So they're playing a bit of a shell game with the money that they're saying they've dedicated to post-secondary education. It's not enough to even get us to the baseline in the colleges, let alone the universities on top of that. Secondly, that would be fine if they want to blame the federal government, except that the colleges are using this as an excuse to downsize in programs that have nothing to do with international student enrollment. And secondly, we've been flagging over-reliance on international student enrollment within this sector for well over a decade to say that this was a dangerous game to play. And finally, the Ford governments are the ones that have actually incentivized this decline. They simultaneously allowed for private-public partnerships again, while creating a tuition freeze on domestic students, and then open the doors for exploitation of international students as part of that. If they had a realistic investment in students, what they would look at is actually funding the system adequately to bring us up to par, to not keep us at the lowest per student funding across Canada. They would look at some of the decisions that the colleges are making. Humber College just laid off all its counselors in the midst of a mental health crisis. The programs that they're targeting are programs that actually affect the most marginalized students within Ontario, the ones who would be the backbone of the economy. And they would work with us in lobbying the federal government in changing those postgraduate work permit restrictions to allow for a slower, softer landing for these students that would allow us to build the economy we need in Ontario.
I guess, what happens if the Ford government doesn't come through here? What's the outcome? What does the future look like?
Sure, what you see behind you is all 4 divisions within the college sector who are gathered together in solidarity to say we will do whatever it takes to force the Ford government's hand. What we are seeing, and one of the privileges about running a large public service sector union that has 200,000 members across this province, is that we see this not as an isolated attack. We see this as actually the root of many of the problems we're seeing across every sector, from social and developmental services to the Ontario Public Service to the colleges themselves. An attack on post-secondary education, an attack on affordable and accessible and community-based education is an attack on every Ontarian. When you have 1.5 million Ontarians who are experiencing a campus closure in their community, those are good jobs that are walking out of those communities. When you're looking at the fact that this college system educates on 500,000 students a year, give or take, that is something that touches every single Ontarian. We know that we have community support. We know we have 50,000 workers just in this sector who are ready to stand tall and fight back. And we know that we're backed by the other 200,000 members of OPSEU who will join us in this fight. What does the pushback look like? It looks like whatever it takes in order to make sure they understand the importance of this system. We will do what is needed to protect good quality public post-secondary education in Ontario. We know the universities will join us. We know from our work on Bill 33 and the attacks that are happening in K through 12 and into post-secondary that these are attacks from cradle to grave on people who are seeking access to education in a safe environment that is supportive to students. You know, one of the things I would look at is also what you heard about earlier is the growth in the administrative and the managerial classes in the colleges, which has exploded at twice the rate of student enrollment. And that includes during the high points of the international student enrollments. When you have a managerial class that expands with that rapidity, but also with an increase in salaries with no oversight, then you have a situation in which I would challenge the government that this is right sizing of the right people. You also have a college employer council who is the bargaining agent for the colleges who frankly has zero skin in this game for the success of public colleges. And we can't even get access to their books because they're an arm's length agency. So if we want to look at how the money that is invested in public education is spent, I would argue that it is going to the wrong pockets. One more? And then, okay. Yeah. Do you want one more and then we'll go over? Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sorry if you've addressed this already. Do you have an example of a program that you say that is being cut to take advantage of the situation as opposed to really being because there's a reduction in international students?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's dozens of examples. You heard James talk about several of them here. I mean, one of the ones that's affecting the media across the board certainly is the downsizing of journalism programs. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, if there's no one left to report on the cuts, then we know they'll continue.
Glad you said that. I have to ask you a question about the tuition freezes, because that's kind of an uncomfortable area of the whole discussion here, which is I recently checked out tuition at a university in Ontario I attended more than 20 years ago, was only barely higher than it was when I went there. And we all know how much the cost of life has risen. How much is part of the responsibility here on the shoulders of Ontarians who may have to accept that they have to pay more so that their kids do have the options of good college programs that you were just talking about?
Yeah, I think that's a false dichotomy, the way that gets set up often, that it's either increase student tuition or, decrease enrollments and downsize the programs and the faculty, et cetera. What you also can look at is where is the place we want to put the investment in Ontario's economy. When you front end that investment into, let's say, free or reduced tuition, but you actually increase the funding for the sector, then you create less of an individual debt load on the students who are then able to put more into the economy when they graduate and become and get jobs within that economy. So what we could look at this is what it is, which is effectively a choice to download individual debt onto students rather than adequately invest in a system that will allow them to succeed. If we look at countries where you have free or nearly free tuition, we see stronger economies, more resilient economies. We see the ability for people to retrain in response to what is a rapidly changing labor market, frankly, that no one can predict what's happening next. So when you invest in the ability for people to get an education without taking on an untenable debt load, as you see in the United States, for example, where students can work at an average income for the rest of their lives with an average amount of student debt and never pay it off. If we follow that path in Canada, then that is a choice this government is making. We would argue that the right choice is to invest in students on the front end by investing in post-secondary education, reducing the costs without reducing the funding. And absolutely, as far as the journalism programs are concerned, your fight is our fight. Okay, thank you very much, folks.
Like the last 10 minutes. God damn it. Could have picked a nice place for shade.
Yes, Patrick, and we're reporting for Toronto today. Yes.